So you don't need to be an expert of the gaming industry to understand just how important Final Fantasy VII is to many people. It's still to this day one of the most respected, celebrated, and cherished games of all time. Now, whether it's the best Final Fantasy game is up for debate, but it's damn near impossible to find someone in the gaming community who hasn't at least heard of this game. Which is why it's even more impressive just how good Final Fantasy VII Remake was. By all accounts, this game should have failed. It got hit with the development hell status, had a long and turbulent development history, and is attempting to both please long-term fans of the original while introducing a whole new generation of gamers to the world and characters of Final Fantasy VII. But to the surprise of everyone, Remake provided an admittedly flawed but damn good first impression. Final Fantasy VII Remake laid down the perfect framework for what would obviously be a successful trilogy, and that's exactly what Final Fantasy VII Rebirth manages to do. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth isn't flawless. In fact, it actually has a lot of flaws. But, like any good remake or any good sequel should, it manages to improve on just about every aspect of Remake, making it not only a great game, but a game that genuinely manages to step up every aspect of what Remake laid down. So we already know what they're doing with the story of Final Fantasy VII. They split it up to focus more on specific parts of said story, making this new game a trilogy. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the second game of said trilogy. It takes place after the gang ends up leaving Midgar and continues their hunt for Sephiroth as he attempts to destroy the planet while also looking to stay one step ahead of Shinra. Now, I could obviously attempt to make a proper rundown of this game's story, but honestly, what's the point? This game is mostly bonkers, and I genuinely think that this is the type of game where, you gotta play it to actually get it. But even if you played even one Final Fantasy game, then you kind of know what to expect. Epic battles, comedy, drama, tragedy, romance, twist, bloodshed, genuine WTF moments, all that good stuff. The game's story is almost nonsensical at times, but between all that, you get a story that really does deliver on all the emotion. It does have some genuinely heartbreaking moments, with every character having a tragic backstory and solid arcs throughout Rebirth. And, I'm not gonna act like these actors are getting like Best Actor awards or anything, but when they needed to deliver a heartfelt monologue or display some genuine emotion, every actor managed to do the job, with standout moments, I think, coming from Aerith and Barrett, in my humble opinion. It also has genuine laugh-out-loud moments that is always a welcome surprise. I always love games, or media in general, that can get me to genuinely belly laugh at either its intentional jokes or just the sheer ridiculousness that I am looking at.
Not so fast, good captain. I want to show my hand.
It's not easy to balance both comedy and drama and everything in between, but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth manages to walk that tightrope just right. And I think that is because of one major thing. The obvious reason: the characters. I was genuinely glued to the story that was presented to me because I was invested in all of these characters, because every character in this game is just great. I mean, of course they are. These are literal icons in the industry. And on top of that, the biggest reason why you grow to love all these characters is because, well, the relationship between the characters was great. The relationship between Cloud and Tifa is great. The relationship between Aerith and Cloud is great. The relationship between Red and Aerith is great. The relationship between Tifa and Aerith is great. The relationship between Barrett and Cloud is great. Any way you want to arrange the party, anytime these characters are on screen with each other, the chemistry and the relations are genuinely on point. thanks in large part due to many of the side quests and the new relationship system that was added in Rebirth that allows the feelings between the characters to become way more expressed. And it really helped to not only cement the bonds that were being formed in-game, but to actually get me to believe that all these characters genuinely cared for each other. Okay, and that's honestly why, coming from someone who never finished the original, I'm really not mad at the endings. Look, I've seen the controversy of everyone being annoyed at the end. I mean, it's not the strongest part of the game, I get that, and yeah, I'd be lying if I said I didn't ask a few questions about the ending. Okay, more like a lot, but it's an ending where, one, the more I thought about it, the more I started to understand, and two, it's a game where even if the story itself is nonsensical, borderline confusing, the emotions of this game still manage to hit home. At the end of the day, I did feel something in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I do think, especially with a story that doesn't make a lick of sense, deserves to be praised. Your deep care for these characters and motivation to do the side quest also provides a great incentive to explore the world of Rebirth. Rebirth's open world is massive, layered, and packed to the brim with stuff to do and things to see. And yet, with all that, it still somehow manages to look and run surprisingly great. I started the game at 60 FPS because I wanted that buttery smoothness, which I did have, but I really wanted to see the visuals pop. So I'd say about 25% through my playthrough, I switched to 30 frames per second, and after that, I did not touch it for the rest of the game, simply because this game's graphic mode really does showcase how beautiful Final Fantasy VII Rebirth actually is. Working your way through the serene and peaceful grasslands or the bustling and eye-catching attraction of Coastal del Sol, the game just allows you to relish in the beauty of this massive world. And then as far as gameplay goes, for a second time around, it is the combat of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that really almost just steals the show of the entire game. Outside of the actual story, most of my smiles and pure enjoyment of this game came from the combat, to the actual controlling of the characters and their moves, to the constant switch back and forth. It's always quick, smooth, and very responsive, and when the screen is being filled with these constant barrages of sword attacks and paw swipes, magical materia attacks, or the insanely sick synergy moves, limit break abilities, or even the icon summons, it's hard not to have a smile plastered to your face anytime you need to partake in it. Oh, yeah, and these boss fights are well, that's not true. There are definitely some bosses that I think are worse or better than others, but as a whole, I feel like every boss fight in this game was a spectacle. And with the combat, and especially that music backing it up, oh god, the music. Rebirth's music, much like Remake, is freaking sensational. This soundtrack is almost always the standout when entering new areas, battling enemies, engaging in epic boss fights, or even engaging in some of the mini games. No matter where it's at, the music is always one of the things you notice first, and with very good reason. The music in Rebirth varies from jazz to pure orchestra and heavy metal. The music is really just one of the biggest contributors to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's stellar atmosphere and presentation. Hearing the dope-ass battle theme heightens the intensity with even the smaller scale enemies in the game. Or even the jazzy beats that play during a riveting game of Queen's Blood that helps to really get you lost in the virtual card game. But we already talked about the world, and no matter how immersive and beautiful it is, which again, yes it is, what's most important is not how beautiful the world looks, but what it has to offer. This is definitely where my own personal problems with Rebirth kind of start to come into play. First and foremost, I want to be clear, the game does in fact have a lot to offer. The game is packed with optional character-driven side quests, optional battles, mini-games galore, Queen's Blood games, towers to unlock, planet essence pools to find. For better or for worse, you will always find something to do. Like I discussed, I think the best thing that this game has to offer in its open world are two things. One, like I said earlier, the side quest. Now, I'm not a completionist. I did not experience every side activity or quest that this game has to offer, but I definitely did do a few of the character-driven ones for my party, and the side quests I did do, those were stories that gave me a deeper understanding of either a teammate, a side character, or a world event, and that usually made them very worthwhile. 2. The minigames. The amount of minigames in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is crazy. And what is even crazier is just how good the majority of them are. But far and away, easily the best minigame of Rebirth, Queen's Blood. This card game is so good, so deep, so freaking addictive that I honestly feel this could have been a game in and of itself, and I probably would have happily bought it. I love Queen's Blood so much. So like I said, Rebirth does in fact have a lot to offer. That is true. But a lot of that stuff, if it isn't a mini game or a specific type of side quest, is kind of repetitive. Okay, very repetitive. Now, cards on the table, I didn't finish many of these world activities like cache locating or life pool finding and stuff. But the ones I did do was fun at first. I genuinely had a good time with just losing myself in the world. But then you keep doing it. You keep getting the same tells that lead you to them with the same cutscenes and the same results. It just kind of felt like I was doing the same thing over and over again, and I'm not gonna lie, it started to bore me. Another issue that I had in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the traversal. This is something that's common with most Square Enix games. The little traversal spots, like where you have to cross a branch or ledge or climb using the little bright yellow ledges, etc. They all move like fucking molasses. It's so freaking slow and I hate it. And you'd think that when they go in the open world, they would have a significantly better grasp on the movement, right? Kinda. It's honestly when you get into the open world, you are able to automatically climb some small hills and ledges. That was handy. I did appreciate that. But still have these mandatory paths that cause the character to move at an almost insultingly slow pace that low-key just grind the game to a halt. It's just so slow, and whether it be a shuffle through a ledge or climbing a mountain, it always takes a crazy amount of time to reach the end, and it's always pretty annoying, especially when you're in the open world and you still have to do those sections. So yes, seriously, those two issues are rough, no doubt about that. But it's hard to stay annoyed with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Like, for every moment in Rebirth where I was this close to putting the controller down, I'd experienced 3 or 4 moments in a row that will remind me why, despite everything, Rebirth is still a great freaking game. This game, for all of its issues, still manages to be just a fun and charming game in most other aspects, to the point that it's really hard to want to leave after it gets its hooks in you. And then at the end of it all, after 65 hours, it's hard to look at Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and think anything but, what a ride. Now, you're not going to hear me say Rebirth is perfect, because it's not. The game's open world can fall into some serious repetition. The traversal of this game is still pretty lackluster, and while I didn't have a huge issue with the ending, I can certainly understand why that would be a killer for many people. But looking back at all the things Rebirth did right, the world being beautiful, the minigames and side quests being fun, the music being absolutely god tier, the story being delightfully over the top, and of course the characters being just such joys to be around due to their wonderful backstories and genuinely believable chemistry. With all that, it's enough to make you not only forget your issues, but at the end of it all, be grateful for the time that you got to spend in this world, and for giving me experiences that I am sure I won't forget anytime soon. It's not flawless, far from it actually, but it's still a game that succeeds at being the two most important things: fun and charming, and those come together to make Rebirth truly an unforgettable journey. And that was my review of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Thank you guys so much for watching. This one took longer than I was expecting it to, but what do you expect? It's a big-ass game, right? And then as for my next review, I honestly haven't decided between Dragon's Dogma 2 or Stellar Blade yet. We'll see, but hey, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. It helps a ton. Be sure to follow me on Instagram. That's @TheGamerCritic, and I will talk to you guys soon. All right, peace.